So today we're going to try and have a look at what PolicyGlass is. PolicyGlass was designed as a policy parser with a particular view on understanding the effect of AWS policies. A lot of policy parsers that you'll find across the internet are aimed at normalizing AWS policies, so things like converting or standardizing values into lists of values rather than individual strings, normalizing case, expanding wildcards into lists of discrete actions, for example. And PolicyGlass does some of this, but takes it one step further and looks at what does this policy mean? What is the effective permission that this policy provides? And also allows you to answer that question across multiple policies. So PolicyGlass also allows you to bring multiple policies together. So if you think of a IAM role, for example, you may have inline policies, you may have managed policies attached, you may have multiple of each, and you can bring all of those together and put them through PolicyGlass and find out what their effect is when taken in aggregate. And it does this by splitting the policy out into shards. And we can have a look at what that looks like here in the PolicyGlass sandbox. So if we scroll down a little bit, we can see there are a few scenarios pre-populated for us. Let's start with the simplest one. It's two statements: an allow statement with an S3 star action and a deny statement with S3 star for a specific bucket. So we can tell by reading this that this will allow S3 star on every resource except for example bucket. And if we click shatter, you can see that the explanation shows exactly that. And this plain English explanation is backed by, in Python, the object, or here, the JSON representation of that PolicyShard object. So this dictionary here represents a PolicyShard. And the effective action is S3 star, and the effective resource is star except for example bucket. And the purpose of breaking these policies and their various statements out into individual shards is that it's these shards which allow you to merge multiple policies together. And trying to do this programmatically is normally a very difficult task. Whereas with the PolicyShard output that PolicyGlass provides, all you need to look at is this single PolicyShard and check whether it's in the inclusion and not in the exclusion. And in fact, if you're working with this in Python, you can do this with a contains. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. We can see that we've imported the policy class and instantiated a policy object with a policy that's identical to the one that we had in the PolicyGlass sandbox. We can then break this policy down into its policy shards and then pass that through the effective, the PolicyShards effect function. And we can see that that prints out a single policy shard. So if we want to check programmatically whether a specific resource is allowed by the policy shards that come out of PolicyShard effect, we just need to loop through those shards. So if we do for PolicyShard in PolicyShards effect, then we can just instantiate a resource object and an action object and check whether those are in the effective action and the effective resource properties of each policy shard. So if we import action and we import resource, then we can say that the action that we're looking for is, well, let's look for action S3 get object and check whether it's in the PolicyShard dot effective action. And then we want to get the resource example bucket, let's say, and see whether that's in the effective resource. Now, if we run that, we can see the first one is true, but the second one is false. So the get object is allowed by the PolicyShard because it's allow S3 star, but example bucket is not allowed because that is in the effective resources exclusion. So if we try any other resource, that should work fine. So if we look for example, my test bucket and run that again, we can see that that action and that resource are both allowed. And that's it. That's how you programmatically check for the effect of a given policy using PolicyGlass.